Now in this lecture, we are going to create a graph using adjacency list. So here again, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to create graph node. So in this case, graph node class will be different than the one that we have created in our previous lecture when we are implementing adjacency matrix. So here we will have extra variable in which we are going to save the neighbors. So that's why I'm just going to add graph node class like this. So here, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to import array list because neighbors will be the type of array list. So it's going to be like this, array list. Then I'm going to declare our class like this, public class graph node. Then here inside this class, as we did before, I'm going to create the name of the graph node. So it's going to be the type of integer. And then we are going to create index with the type of integer for the graph node. So we have to identify the index as well. Then, as I mentioned before, the extra property over here will be the neighbors, because when we are creating neighbors, we are going to create them as a linked list. So that's why I'm going to add neighbor as array list over here. So we are going to create graph nodes and add to this array list as a neighbor of the node that we have over here. So if a node has a edge to other nodes, so in this case we are going to add other nodes to this neighbor list over here. So it's going to be like this, array list. So it's obvious that it's going to be the type of graph node because these are also nodes that we are going to add as a neighbor. So it's going to be neighbors. So I'm going to put it like this, new array list with the type of graph node. So with this we have initialized our array list like this. Then what I'm going to do, inside constructor, I'm going to initialize the name of the graph node and the index of graph nodes. It's going to be like this. So here it's going to be like this, public graph node. So as a parameter, it's going to take two parameters, name and index. So inside constructor, we are just going to initialize them. Name with the name that we are getting from parameter and index with the index that we are getting from parameter. Now with this, we have successfully implemented our graph node over here. Then the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to continue to implement our graph class. So here I have declared our graph class like this. Then first I have imported Java util library because in this case we are going to use array list from this util library. And then I have an extra method over here which prints out the graph that we are going to create to the console. So as I mentioned before, this is not the scope of this lecture, so I'm not going to go to the details of this function over here. So if you want, you can copy it and examine it. But in this case, it's just looping through the array list and its neighbors and printing out the values the way that we showed in our presentation. So for now, you just need to know that this function prints out the graph in the console as the way that we have explained. So here, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create node list, array list with the type of graph node. So I'm going to name it node list is equal to new array list with the type of graph. So with this, we have initialized it. Then inside constructor, I'm just going to get the node list from the user and assign it to this node list that we created over here. So it's going to be like this, public graph. So as a parameter, it's going to be node list. So it's going to be the type of array list with the graph node. So I'm going to name it node list. So inside constructor, we are going to put it like this. This node list is equal to node list. So with this, we have successfully initialized our graph over here. So in this case, we have only the nodes in our graph. So we need an extra method which will add the edge to this graph over here. So in this case, we are going to create a method in which it adds undirected edge to the graph. So in this case, it's going to add this edge in both ways. So that's why we called it undirected graph. So it's going to be like this, public void add undirected edge. So this one also as a parameter will take two parameters. So the first parameter I, which is the index of the first node, and the second parameter will be j, which is the index of the second node. So if we add them, it's going to create both way edge between these nodes over here. So the first thing that I'm going to do over here, as we said, these nodes over here will be the type of the graph node. So I'm just going to create these nodes first. So it's going to be node first is equal to, so first I'm going to create a variable which will keep the first node's value over here. So we are going to get this node from the node list that we have created. So it's going to be used by using get function. So we are going to use the index. So similarly, we are going to do the same operation for the second node over here. and I'm going to create a variable which will be the second, and in this case it's going to be used by taking the index of j, because the index is the second node's index. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add first the second node as a first node's neighbor, then I'm going to add the first node as the second node's neighbor. So in this case it's going to be like this: first dot neighbors dot add. So I'm going to add the second node as a neighbor of first node, then second node neighbors dot add. I'm going to add first node as a second node's neighbor. So with this we are creating two directional way between these nodes over here. Now with this we have successfully implemented our method over here. So as you remember, in our previous lecture we have implemented this graph that we have, that is shown in this picture over here, in adjacency list as well. So after implementation it was looking like this. So we are going to do the same operation over here. We are going to implement it over here, and then we are going to print out to the console to see that if our output looks like the way that is shown over here. So here the first thing that I'm going to do inside main class, I'm going to create a node list. Then we are going to insert the nodes that we have in our graph over here to this node list over here. So in this case the node list will be the type of array list. So it's going to be type of graph node. So we are going to declare it like this. Now after declaring it, I'm going to add these nodes that we have over here to this node list over here. So it's going to be like this: node list dot add. So we need to create for each node graph node. So it's going to be graph node with the value of a. The name of node will be a, and index starts from 0. So I'm just going to copy it from here and pass it over here 4 times, because in this case we have 5 nodes in our graph. So the second node will be b with the index of 1, and the third node will be c with the index of 2, and the fourth node is d with the index of 3, and the fifth node is e with the index of 4. Now with this we have inserted all nodes to this node list over here. Now then, based on this node list over here, we are going to create graph using the graph class that we created over here. So as you remember, when we have created this graph class, it was taking as a parameter node list. So here we are going to put g is equal to new graph with the parameter of node list. Now then I'm going to add all edges that we have over here to this graph over here. So we are going to call g.add undirected edge with this edge that is shown in this graph over here. So first we are going to add from a to b, from b to a. So from a to b is going to be 0 and 1, because the index of a is 0 and the index of b in this case is 1. So with this we have successfully created a link between a and b and a. Then it's going to continue like this. So I'm just going to pass this code 6 times over here, because in this case we have 6 edges. So the second one will be from a to c, c to a, so it's going to be like this, and the third one will be from a to d, from d to a, so in this case the index is 3. Then the third one will be from b to e, from e to b, so it's going to be b's index is 1 and e's index is 4. And the third one will be from c to d and d to c, so c's index is 2, d's index is 3, and last one will be from d to e, e to d. So in this case it's going to be d's index is 3 and e's index is 4. Now after doing so, I'm just going to print out this graph by using toString method over here. So as you remember, we have created toString method in our graph class over here. So if I run our code, so you can see over here that our output is identical to the output that we have shown over here. So as you remember in our previous lecture, when we are discussing the adjacency list, we have implemented this graph like this over here. So we have shown that it should look like this. So after implementation, when we are printing out this graph to the console, we can easily see that it prints out the way that we have over here. So this means that we have successfully implemented graph using adjacency list. Now with this, we have come to the end of this lecture. So in this lecture, we have explained how can we implement a graph using adjacency list. So hopefully everything is clear about this implementation. So see you in the next lecture.